Hello and welcome back to another video. I've just received my November Scrawlrbox in the post. It is quite thick and the post lady was adamant it was going to go through the post box, so it's a bit torn here at the corner. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's in here. If you don't know what Scrawlrbox is, it is a monthly art subscription box based here in the UK, free postage and packaging to UK customers, and there's an additional fee for abroad, I'm sure. And it's where you receive monthly art supplies, mysterious art supplies, and a scrawler zine that tells you a bit about the art supplies, some tips and tricks, and a bit about a featured artist, as well as a featured artwork by the featured artist and a little bit about them. You will also receive a little sweet every month, which is always nice, and a scrawler challenge, which is a word or phrase where you use the supplies just in this box to create a piece of artwork. I highly recommend, link down in the description below. They are perfect for getting your creative juices flowing, and I personally love receiving these every month. It's like Christmas once a month, so I do recommend them. So let's get into this video. Alright, so I've just taken off the pull tag off, and let's see what's inside here. Surprisingly neat considering it was jammed through the letterbox. Let's take all of this out. Another thing to note is that for every Scrawlrbox you purchase, a tree will be planted, which I think is pretty damn cool. So that's always a thing to spur me on for buying these. So we will put this scrawler zine to one side because we don't want to spoil in their supplies. So this is the featured artwork. It looks beautiful. Some sort of watercolour pencils or something like that, or chalk even, I don't know. It looks watercolour, but it could be chalk, I'm not sure. Let's have a look. So if you pause the video here, you can read a little bit more about the featured artist, but the featured artist is Claudia, living in Germany. So her social media here at the bottom. So she's an optician. Trying to think, oh yes, watercolour. So she's mentioned watercolour, so that's what I'm assuming this box is containing. So we have, Scrawlrbox are really good. They've been including more booklets of paper rather than just individual sheets of paper, and this is watercolour paper. Now I do have this brand in a watercolour pad, and I know it is actually a very good brand of watercolour paper, so I'm excited to use this. And it is a Scrawlrbox exclusive because it must have a certain amount of pages that you can't usually buy in the stores, so that's interesting. Cold pressed, so it does have a texture to it, which is very nice. And then let's see what watercolours we have received. I'm assuming they're going to be watercolours. Oh, this looks exciting already. Okay, let's move that out of the way. So our sweet is, it says menthice on it, so I'm assuming it's some sort of minty, mentholy sweet. So interesting to try that. Never seen those before. We have our themed vinyl sticker, which is lovely. I love the colours on that. Very nice. And then this tells us about the supplies, so we will have a look at that in a moment. We have another Derwent pencil, which is water soluble in Midnight Black. So we received these I think 2 boxes ago, or a couple of boxes ago, so that'll go nicely in the set we received last time. I don't think we received the black, so that's good. And then we have received a Derwent set of paint, but it says graphitin, god, that's hard to say, a unique blend of graphite paint with colour for dramatic tonal work. So I would imagine these are very similar to the liquid pencils, so that's very interesting. I've never seen these by Derwent, and they come in the handy travel case, which I actually have a normal set of watercolours in this travel set. So I'm going to open this up and swatch, and then we'll have another discussion about what my thoughts are of the supplies before we get into the artwork. So this paint set includes 12 pans of water-soluble paint made from a unique blend of graphite and a hint of colour. So when I was testing these, I actually really liked them. They do have that graininess of a graphite watercolour, but they are very good. And on the card it says this is a subtle and naturally muted colour palette. It's ideal for urban and natural landscapes as well as expressive art. These versatile paints are also mixable with other Derwent watercolour paints, pencils and blocks, which is great. I think I'm going to try these with the Derwent Inktense. I think that would be a great little experiment. Right, as you can see there, I've just finished swatching, but before I go into that a little bit further, I want to just have a quick flick through the zine. So this is the first page that tells you a little bit about all the supplies. There is a discount on Derwent, on the Derwent store, which is Derwent 15, so you can use that if you don't get these boxes, and it saves 15% on that store. Did I just say that? Probably. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the supplies. This is a little bit about the artist. It's very interesting. So I don't know, if you pause the video, you can probably read this. Then these are the Scrawler tips. So I found a lot of these very interesting. They were talking about the generic kind of watercolor techniques using wet and dry paper, wet in wet, blah 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 blah. Then they were talking about splattering, blooming, dry brushing, washing, and texture and absorption. So the absorption is using coarse salt, which is a very common watercolor technique, which I have used, which I'll show you the result of in a minute. And there's also texture, and they interestingly told us to try out using cling film, and that is actually how this sticker was made, and I thought that sounded amazing, so I've also tried that out. So we will again look at that technique very soon. And then it talked about how the artist created the featured artwork for this box and how they were very loose and adding wet in wet. So this at the top here is actually a wet in wet technique, which I've also tried, but I did notice, because these are graphite watercolors, so there is graphite in the watercolors, it can become very grainy, as you can see at the top here in this sky area. So I think I'm not the biggest fan of that. Maybe we'll do a few tries. I'm thinking of doing some thumbnailing for this planning stage, but that is something to be aware of, is the graininess. This is the Scrawler gallery for 2 boxes ago, I believe, when we had the Posca pens. I struggled with this box, and look at all this amazing art. Some people have got such great talent with these Poscas, and I'm very jealous at some of these, but they're really good. And then this is just talking about landscapes and a little bit of Scrawler news there. So it's very informative, and I really enjoy getting these zines. I actually have a little collection from when I first started getting them, and it's very nice to look through them and get hints and tricks about all the art supplies that we get. So going to the swatching, these paints are absolutely amazing. If you watch my video where I used the liquid pencil in one of the Scrawler boxes, the liquid pencil was great, but it was just very dark and there wasn't much pigment in terms of the colour part of them. Whereas these are the opposite. There's a very subtle graphite tint and there's a sheen on them, and if you rub your finger on them you do get that graphite on your finger, but the pigment is so strong that you can at least create a piece of artwork that has the colour in it, not just the graphite area. The what's it called? The graphitint Derwent pencil is lovely. It doesn't ghost very much, so that's very nice, and it blends really nicely. And then these are my experiments. So I tried the cling film, I tried the salt, this was the wet in wet, but then I actually dabbed my kitchen roll tissue in this to absorb the paper, and it created a nice texture on there, which is nice. And then this is actually using this sponge that I received in the paint set, and it was kind of a dry technique, so I dabbed this on to get a dry paint layer, and then I used it on here to stipple, which is great, and I think I'm going to use that for trees and maybe texture on bushes, etc. So that's very nice. So we'll have a look at how the cling film and the salt worked. So the salt, I'm going to just brush this onto here. I don't know if I've let this dry long enough, but hopefully it's worked the majority of it. So yeah, we get a bit of a texture there. I think if you have it wetter and let it dry longer, it will probably work even more. But that's actually soaked up the paint and created this kind of stipply effect, which is lovely. I think you could use that for all manner of nature aspects, like this ponds, water, things like that. And then this is the cling film, which I'm very excited about. And hopefully I've let this dry long enough. Oh wow, look at that. I think that is a fantastic technique, and I didn't even know anything about that. That's brilliant. I'm really excited to use that. So I'm going to do some thumbnailing off camera, and then hopefully we'll have a time lapse of some really nice artwork, so please stay tuned for that. the results are in. I really liked these. I really like them. In comparison to the Derivan liquid pencil, I think these are a great alternative. They're way more pigmented. They have less of that graphitiness and the thickness of that graphite paint that Derivan did. And I think I prefer them in the pans. They're just way nicer. I did notice that if I left water on top of the pans here, it would actually create a bit of a paste. As you can see there, it's dried a bit paste-like. And that was good. It was nice to lay down a thicker paste when I needed that dark colour, when I needed the graphite to show through. It went through a few stages. I think I didn't show this last bit where I changed the bottom here because I didn't like how it was going. I was working on a reference that I took a photograph in Northumbria in the UK, and this is what I was working off, that reference photo, and there was like a kind of a bit of a hump here, and then it was actually the sandy beach, kind of where the wash had come from the sea. It pushed up like sediment and created this weird line texture in 3 lines, but it just didn't translate enough on this. Another observation is that I still have not learned that I need to do very thin washes of watercolour. I tend to work with watercolour far too thick. I think it's something I need to work on personally. It's nothing to do with these supplies. So there are parts here where I think I've worked far too thick rather. But overall I really like it. I like the moody sky I've got. The photograph I took is obviously all blue and everything. There's no sunset or sunrise in the photograph, so I created this based off my test thumbnails. I really like this that I did, and so that's kind of the colour theme I was going for, a really moody sky and like a still calm sea with kind of this castle in the distance there. What else can I say? I tried, you will have seen probably a clip unless I've edited it out, who knows what I will do in a minute, but I did try using the cling film technique on this bit here to create rocks and jagged things, but I'd already laid down the colour and let it dry, so even when I reactivated it there was not that white paper underneath to show through because it had already dried a layer on there, so that actually didn't work. So I really want to try that out on a bigger piece again, and maybe create something different. I did have the idea of potentially having a tree coming up here and using that cling film technique on the back, but again I actually liked how the composition of this has turned out, so I didn't want to add a tree in there and ruin it. I also didn't leave the white space for it, so it probably wouldn't have looked okay. I have been looking through social media and noticed that this paint set actually comes with a little swatch of the colours, but mine didn't, so I did make my own, which was really handy, and I rearranged these to be in this colour order because I preferred it, and the colours are absolutely beautiful. I think you can't really go wrong with these. There's a good range, and I think if you want the brighter colours then just use watercolours with these over the top. These are definitely going to work with watercolours way better than the liquid pencil did, so if you haven't got this box and you're looking to try a new supply, I highly recommend these. They are lovely to work with, and you get that lovely kind of graphite sheen to your work, which is lovely. I use this as sketch, and I've kind of added a bit of darkness here and there, but it does not lay down very well over this. Maybe if you pressed hard enough, but it's not kind of the look I was going for. But overall I really like this box, and I think Scrawler have outdone themselves with these supplies again, and like I say, highly recommend. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new here. I produce a video every week, and I'm actually going to be trying out some vlogs, so potentially 2 videos a week on a good week. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.